process. Okay, so now my book cover I'm going to place in place, and I've got marks here and marks everywhere to make sure I'm going to get it in the right place because I'm so super accurate about everything. So I'm going to lay that down, and then I would do the same with the back and just let it hang over like this, right? Burnish it down well, and then let it dry overnight, or not. Now, what we want to do here is to make mitered corners. Mitered corners mean that they're going to line up like this, right? So they're going to line up really perfectly just like that in the corner, right? This is super tricky, but my method requires no measuring, and if you listen carefully, you'll see how it's going to work. So if you take any piece of paper, and I would actually urge you to start with a fresh sheet of paper right out of wherever. It's already got a corner that we know is right, okay? So all we have to do in order to get a 45-degree angle, which is what we need right here to make a perfectly mitered corner, is to fold this in this direction, right? You don't need such a giant sheet of paper. You actually could use a business card or something if you had something small. As long as you know that it's true. And now we have a perfect 45-degree angle, right? This is 45 degrees. So all I have to do now is to line that up with my corner and the point of the board. If you can't see, you can stand up to see better. And we're almost ready to trim. The problem is, if I were to trim this right along the edge of this board, I'd end up with a funny gap at the corner. So I'm going to use, again, my scrap, hold it up against the corner, and then place my paper. Okay? And again, now I have just the perfect amount of space there. And I want to trim this. So, unless you're perfect, you need a ruler. So, you see I'm using a ruler. Because I'm not perfect. And then we're going to trim that away. So you're going to do all four corners so they look like this. Okay? Now, we're going to apply glue here and here. And this is where this paper might be a little bit thick, but we'll do our best. We're going to apply glue everywhere, even on that little corner there. You're going to apply glue, 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 glue. And you're going to bend these over while you're burnishing. So this tool, can you see how important this is? Having a good burnishing tool is super important. And so you should end up with a perfectly mitered corner. Mine is a little overlapped, so I might actually trim that away if I were going to get graded on this, so it would be really perfect. But your corner should match up something like that. And all four corners are going to look like that, okay? So in the end, we really want our book block, and this is all glued up, but the next thing we're going to do is to put the pocket in place for our book block to go into. So again, you could let this dry overnight or not. And now we're on to the next page, which is the pocket instructions for the sliding pocket. Now, the sliding pocket you're going to have to print out on a separate document. I am going to use Kayla's beautiful poster again. Wherever I put the scrap to that. Here it is. So I'm going to use this beautiful poster to make my pocket out of. Now, again, I hate to measure, so I'm not going to measure anything. So I'm going to just kind of lay it down on the board, move it in about a ½ inch. So if we remember the pocket, one of the mistakes that a lot of students make is that they make the pocket go all the way to the spine, and it doesn't. You can see there's about 1 inch actually up to the edge of the pocket, right? So it doesn't go right to the spine, it goes about an inch away. So we're going to measure that. Just, you can eyeball it or you can use a ruler to measure it. So of course I'm going to eyeball it today. Make sure that you're really square here and trace off your board. Because you want the pocket to be pretty much the same size as the book board. Do you see that? So a little bit larger, that's going to allow the pages to slide in and out really easily. So I just use this to trace off of so I don't have to measure anything. Because you know, I hate to measure. Again, I'm just going to use the width of the ruler to measure my flap. And I'm going to use my 45-degree angle to cut the corners off. Now, in this case, I don't need to worry about the width of the board because there's no board. So I can put this right up against the edge. So I'm going to line this up to the edge and to the corner. And I'm going to just trim that off. And I'm trying really hard to be perfect here. I really should use a ruler. That was terrible. Don't do that. And then I can even use my scrap here on the other side to line it up. And now, because I want this to be a perfect clean fold, I'm going to score this. So I'm going to line up my ruler, get my bone folder, now for this you really should use double stick tape or twin tack. For this, whoa, that was a nice sound. Let's do that. That was fun. That's the most fun I've had all day. So now this is all scored, and I'm going to just bend these in because I don't, the whole purpose of this is just to make a pocket on the back. And if I've done it well, these corners should line up even a little more perfectly than that did. The last time I did it, of course it was better, but it should look like this on the wrong side. Okay? And then on the right side, this should be the same as your end papers. So whatever your end papers are, this should look like that, okay? And then all you're going to do is to glue this in place. So you're going to have this whole thing covered perfectly, and that should line up perfectly, and you're going to put it right into place on your book like that, okay? This is going to be exposed. It doesn't matter because we're going to cover that up in a minute with our book block, okay? So what I would do here is to take twin tack and put it all around the edge, as close to the edge as you can get it, or you can use double stick tape here and stick it right down into place. Are you guys with me without my having to actually do that? Yeah. Okay. So then what you're going to have is something that looks like this, okay, without the book block in place. And now we're going to get our book block ready and trim the book block. This is the scariest part of the whole project because you have your whole book block all together and you have to trim through the whole thing. Now, I know this is nerve-wracking. There's a couple of ways to do this. One is to use the guillotine we have upstairs. If your book is especially thick, we have a guillotine, which we don't use on students very often, so it's nice and clean. But it basically is a guillotine for paper, right? And it's upstairs in the faculty workroom. You must have a faculty with you to do it because it's potentially, you could become an amputee after you've used it. So you want to make sure you have someone with you to do it. You want to be well rested and all those things. But it's perfectly doable. Most of you are going to be doing this and without enough time to plan that well. So it's perfectly doable to do this with an X-Acto knife. You need to have about 10 brand new blades to do this. So you are changing your blade often. But remember we made those black lines here, right? That's what those are for. So we're just going to trim the book out. Just don't try to do it all at once. Just trim slowly. If you get through one sheet of paper with each cut, that's fine. And you're going to trim all 3 sides. Don't trim, of course, on the fold, or you're going to end up with separate sheets of paper. When I was in graduate school, we had to do a book every single semester. And so usually this was the worst for me. I was always so nervous, and we had this ancient old guillotine, and I was always doing it like 5 minutes before class because it made me so nervous. So now you look through your pages and your book should be perfect, except it's not in the book block, okay? Now, this would normally be end paper, so all we have to do now is to put this in our, where did it go? Here it is, in our book. And it's very simple. You just put glue or twin tack on this side of the page and you glue it into place. The most important alignment is this alignment right here so that it aligns perfectly with the spine. If you've done everything right, you should have an equal 1/4 inch all the way around. Somehow my measurement is a little bit off, but that's because you guys made me nervous. Look at my other book. It's perfect. I wasn't as nervous, I think, because I wasn't being filmed. But it should look like this with that perfect 1/4 inch all the way around. Okay? Now comes the tricky part, which is getting the last page into the pocket. Because what we want to do is have it so that it slides easily in and out. Now, you can see that the page disappears. You don't see the page? So it's not necessary for the page to be the entire length. So what we do with the book block, even before you glue it into place, is to take that last page, trim it ever so slightly at an angle. So if you wanted to have a measurement, you could come down on the outside here about 1/4 inch and just trim from near the spine to that 1/4 inch. So I'm kind of exaggerating a little because my book is smaller, so the measurement looks huge, but on your bigger book, 1/4 inch won't look so much at an angle. You can also cut off the end, and I suggest that you cut off at least as much as your fold under was. So if you remember, our fold under was the thickness of the ruler, so I'm going to just trim off that much. Maybe even a little tiny bit more, so it doesn't accidentally bang up against that somehow, right? And then to make it even easier, just round the edges. No one's going to see this, so it doesn't have to be beautifully done. Of course, you'll know, but the last page should look like that. Okay? And that way, it's going to slide easily into that space. Those rounded corners are going to make your life so much easier, and it slides right into that pocket. So that when you open and close, can you see how that works? It goes in and out of the pocket really, really easily. And now, you're done. Yay. Oh. Okay, any questions? All right. If you get stuck, remember we're going to be having those workshops for you. Feel free.